Well, good evening. Good evening, and how's everyone? Thank you for joining us this evening. As was mentioned, we'll be talking about the pandemic, public safety, and what other issues you may raise this evening. If there are questions around public safety that I'm unable to answer, I think you'll get a better response from the Division of Police. I do have the Chief of Police, Chief Williams, on the line also. So let's start with the pandemic. I want to continue to remind people that the pandemic is not over. Whatever you may hear from anyone, the pandemic is not over, and people are still being infected. Now, to put it in context, as you know, this started off sometime in March, and it started off relatively small, and it increased over time, and most of the country shut down in terms of interaction between people and social gathering. Businesses began to close up in order to prevent the spread of the virus. And as time went on, there was this movement to reopen our economy. And if you remember back then, in one of our Tele Townhall meetings, I said to people then, and I'm saying it now, that reopening the economy and doing it in a way that will help prevent the spread of the virus is the correct way. That, however, did not happen throughout the country because there was no consistency in terms of policy and leadership there. In the state of Ohio, we were fortunate in the beginning that Governor DeWine took leadership and was able to help orchestrate us as a state through this. But as the state of Ohio began to gradually reopen, and that occurred, what happened was more and more people began to interact with each other as they went to work, as they went out in public, and there was social gathering. And as a result of that, we began to have another spike. And that additional spike really put Cuyahoga County into the red zone. The red zone is the second worst zone. There are 4 zones, and we were in, I believe, the red zone, which is the second worst zone in terms of the increase in infection. Since that time, and that's been we stayed there maybe about a month, but since that time, we have moved from the third level in the 4-level zone, and we've improved to being in the second level now. Now, how did that come about? As I had mentioned before, the rules are the same. Stay at home if you can. If you have to go out, wear a mask, keep social distancing, and constantly wash your hands. So it got to the point that in Cleveland that we instituted a mandatory mask direction out of the mayor's proclamation and legislation we presented to council so that we could enforce that. And our strategy was to go into those areas that would have large gatherings of people who were in a closed area, indoors mainly, and where there was likely not to be social distancing. So we targeted bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. And for about, I would say maybe 4 weeks now, we've had a concerted effort with the state liquor people, our health department, and public safety in going throughout the entire city to enforce our mask ordinance and our social distancing ordinance and our capacity ordinance for people and the number of people who can be in bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. As a result of that, we began to see a leveling off and declining. Now, the state was very helpful in that they instituted 10 o'clock last call for alcohol and consumption by 11 o'clock. So it's really helped because basically after 11 o'clock, there's no bar or club or restaurant that can serve alcohol. Now, with that, we have gone from over 100 cases a day at our peak, maybe about a month ago, to as low as 12, I believe it was, or 13 yesterday, and I think we've had about 20 new infections to date. So you can see how it has helped to level off and cause some decline. Now, our next strategy is to move our resources and personnel into the area where there is mass gathering, and which is the area where, as we do tracing, that we find most infections occur, and that is where you have gatherings of family members, barbecues, street clubs, block parties, cabarets, those kind of things. Now, of course, we're not going to go into people's homes or into their yards and enforce mass ordinances in that aggressive way. But we are going to be developing an approach and a protocol that will really deliver the message to people in private settings now that they are the main cause now of the spread of the virus when they social gather without a mask or social distancing. And so we want to have a real intense educational program, public service announcements, and we will be doing some enforcement as we begin to move out into basically the residential side of the city of Cleveland. And not only is that based on tracing the primary source of new infections, it is now becoming the primary sources of complaint that have arisen from neighbors, particularly when you have large parties in a home or with dozens of people and people basically cordon off the street and having their own block parties and things like that at night. So we will be looking at that as we move forward. Now, as we go through this, our goal is to get to zero infection, and to have that zero infection last for a period of time. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you about is public safety. Cleveland is no different than most urban centers throughout the country. We have seen an increase in crime, particularly violent crimes, and a significant increase, particularly during this pandemic. The chief is on the line, and if there are questions around enforcement efforts, he can talk about that. We are partnering with our federal partners and state partners, FBI, the Drug, Alcohol, and the DEA, the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, U.S. Marshal, Highway Patrol, the county sheriff. We're partnering with them in a coordinated effort to go after organized crime activity that is really around trafficking in drugs and that is perpetrating a lot of crime out on the street, particularly homicides and felonious assault shootings. One final thing before I open it up for questions. As you know, we had social unrest. I think it was May 30th, and there was one day a riot downtown, some destruction of property, those police vehicles, and as well as storefronts. We were through our efforts and cooperating with our partners. There has been 10 indictments at the county level for adults who participated in the destruction of property and looting downtown, and one juvenile that we're aware of. and that effort is still in progress, and we intend to aggressively move forward with identifying those who are part of the destruction of property, both public property as well as private property and looting in the city of Cleveland. So I will open it up for questions. I'd gladly talk to anyone about what I mentioned or clarification in regards to what I mentioned or any other subject that you may bring up. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jackson, for that very informative opening comments. And as a reminder for everyone that's joined us on this call, if you have a question that you would like to ask, just press *3 on your telephone keypad at any time to get into the queue to ask your question. Now, if we do not get to your question, you're welcome to reach out to the City of Cleveland via our social media pages or by calling 311 or by using the Mayor's Action Center at 216-664-2900. Again, that number is 216-664-2900. Remember, press *3 on your phone keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask your question. And so let's go ahead and get our first caller on the line with us. We've got Mrs. Wade joining us. Go ahead, ma'am. You're live with the mayor. What's your question?
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. So my question is, first of all, Mayor Jackson, I know in your past teleconferences you have stated that there will be no defunding of the police. I am aware, and I'm sure others are aware, that Marxist protesters did show up at your home demanding the defunding of the police. So I just basically want to know if you are still committed to not defunding nor redirecting funds. And my second question is surrounding the election and public safety. Do you all have strategies in place? Because I'm sure there's probably going to be some more unrest around that to make sure that we don't have another repeat of what happened in May. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your two questions. In terms of the public safety around the election, we do know there needs to be some heightened awareness in regards to voting. It's a very unusual situation in this country now where people are being intimidated or threats of intimidation around elections. So we are aware of that, and the police chief will be doing whatever he needs to do to ensure that people feel safe and are safe when they go to the polls to vote if they choose not to vote absentee or by mail. Now, in terms of defunding the police, you're right. The police, there was a demonstration in front of my house. You mentioned who the organization. I didn't know who it was. All I know is it was around 6:30 in the morning. I was awake, and I heard people out front talking, and so my wife was still asleep. And I heard somebody say, no, I thought it was no justice, no peace, but I guess it was no justice, no sleep. And so I woke my wife up. I said, baby, they're out there saying if there's no justice, there's no sleep, so you should be awake. And so I listened to them, and I'm inside, but I listened to them. And you're right, they were very young and very peaceful, but they had their point of view. And one of the things that they talked about was defunding the police. Interesting, and is that one of the speakers around defunding the police made a comment saying that if you want to know what defunding the police and not having a police force means, just look at or go to a suburban community, which indicates that they're not completely aware of what they're speaking on. To get direct answer to your question, my mind has not changed. Whether people demonstrate in front of my house is irrelevant in terms of me doing what I believe is the right thing. We need police, and we need to have an adequate number of police to be able to address normalcy, not including the rise in crime that we have and the violence of that rise in crime. And so we need the police. The question is when the police are there and when they show up, are they behaving in a constitutional and a professional way and conducting themselves in a way that is of service to the community as opposed to being something that is a disservice to the community? That is the question. And that is why we do a lot of training in regards to it. Now, let me, on the other side of this coin, however, let me point out to you that I'm in agreement with the principle that people talk about, that there needs to be the additional allocation of resources into areas that are more helpful to people. I'm just saying that I can't accomplish that and would not do that by taking the money away from police service, because we need that, especially at this time. But there is significant need for those things to be addressed around education, the disparity in health care, the disparity in equity in terms of wealth creation, all of these tiny things that are the underlying issues as to why there is crime, because crime is just a symptom. And so there's something that perpetuates crime, and to address the inequities and the disparities and the racism will go a long way in helping to reduce crime. So I'm in agreement with that. And we've spent a lot of time and energy and resources attempting to address those particular areas already, even before the social unrest. And we'll continue to do that. The problem becomes, again, as the virus exists and as it persists, the economy is less robust. As a result of that, tax revenues coming to the city has been significantly reduced. And so there is a need for us to evaluate and analyze how we spend money. But again, no, I have not changed my position. We're not defunding the police. We're not redirecting resources away from them at this time, because we need to keep them in place. But at the same time, the notion of funding additional things to help people that would help to eliminate crime, I'm in complete support of.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And it's quite refreshing to see we have a lot of attendees on this call and a lot of people looking to ask questions. So we're going to move on quickly to our next caller. We've got Sandy on the line with us now. Sandy, go ahead with your question for Mayor Jackson.
Hi. I hope you agree. And what do you think about this question? Okay. What is the greatest and biggest threat to the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health of this nation, this city? Is it COVID-19, which Trump knew about and didn't do anything and is doing very little about it? Is it race relations, which has always been here, but his attitude exacerbates the hatred? Shame on him. The children, when the president does not respect the people of this country, does not respect the law, and is a bully, what these poor kids are seeing the success he gets out of this. So, again, I ask, what is the biggest threat to the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health of this country?
Okay, I will answer your question. Thank you for the question. It's a great question, because it's not just the country, It is the individual states, cities, families, communities, everything. And that is, the biggest threat is that of hate. Hate. And those who use hate as a way to access, maintain, and use power for their own benefit in order to work an agenda for themselves and a small group of people. That is, and what happens in order for that to work, you have to traumatize a nation. You have to traumatize a community. You have to traumatize an individual. And a traumatized nation, community, and individual becomes very susceptible to manipulation because they're in need of help. They're in need of creating a stability in their life because they're traumatized. And they're easy to take advantage of. And so the underlying thing that allows for that to happen and to be manipulated is hate. And the manipulation of the differences between us, whether it's race, whether it's class, whether it's educational attainment, whatever those differences are, that someone can come there and cause a boogeyman mentality where this group hates that group or believes that that group is the reason for their misery. And in order when you do that, you traumatize, and it results in traumatization of a nation, of communities, and individuals. That is our greatest threat. And it's by people who live in darkness, think in darkness, who need chaos and confusion in order for them to access and maintain and use power for their personal benefit and the creation of wealth. That is what it's about. And so for that person to function and manipulate, they need a traumatized nation, community, and individual so that they can have chaos and confusion, and they manipulate that and facilitate that hate so that they can, again, maintain, access, maintain, and use power for their benefit. That is the greatest threat to America, and you see it is playing out all over the place now. Even out in our communities, when you have young people killing each other, they don't even know why they're doing it.
All right, next on the line, we're joined by JT. JT, go ahead with your question, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering, are we having access to that new social justice fund that the whole country is creating for minority business, as far as Facebook, the NBA, $100 million, to the Black Information Network, another $100 million, the NAACP, CBS just struck a deal to create a $100 million minority content creator. We need to have a business association to access that fund. That will create jobs for not minorities, but for the whole city and the state. And there's $1 billion just been put together within the last month.
Right, and that's the thing that is happening now, is not just what you mentioned, but I believe Jobs Ohio is also attempting to put together a large amount of money, $100 million or so, to help reinvest in a general economy with some emphasis and some understanding that there has to be equity associated with how that money, who access that money, how it's spent. But as you mentioned, these are very new dollar resources. And what our economic development people are doing, they're looking at all of these various resources that are coming up, and they're looking at them to see how do they access. A lot of it is accessed by creating tax breaks for people who would invest in it in order to get a tax break, and then that money is to use to facilitate an outcome that they want, and it could be for the creation of minority businesses through startup business or the support of existing businesses or just into the general economy, whether the majority or minority. So it really is a matter of what are the rules associated with it. If it's a governmental thing, because there's certain kind of requirements to go along that. Is it private? If it's private, then what are the kind of how do you access that, and what is the liability of that? So our economic development people are looking at all of these things that are popping up, as you said, within the last month or two, really designed around equity. And as you know, one of the things that I believe was the Republican senator, a black Republican senator, I believe it is, he's the one, if I'm understanding it correctly, who started the opportunity zone, where there was out of the federal government, where there was zones created, and there was a criteria how you create the zone, and then and as a result of being in the zone, then you were able to access certain dollars, and it was easier dollars to access, probably better financing, all these other kind of things. And our people are working on that. And I know, as you mentioned, there are others that are popping up, so they're looking at them.
All right, we're joined now by Mrs. Latrice. Welcome to the call, ma'am. You're live with the mayor. What is your question?
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
I have a couple questions. First, vote, vote, vote. Your voting is your privilege and your right. That's first.
Right.
And no vote, no voice. Okay?
Right. You can't complain if you don't. Right. You're right about
that's right. That's right. My question is, I see the lack of police presence in the Buckeye area.
Right.
I don't see a lot of police at all, patrolling the streets. So,
go ahead now. Go ahead.
And the crime is very high, to the point
right.
where I'm leaving my street. I've fought this fight for 22 years. I can't do it anymore. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've worked with the city, as much as I can, and they have helped, But
right.
it's just the lack of police presence right now. And what I'm seeing is a deterioration of worse deterioration of the neighborhood than
right.
what it was before. I'm just watching it fall apart. And then all these parties with this COVID, I'm like, are you serious? No mask. And I'm also in the nursing field. So I'm like, this is crazy. And we need police presence.
Well, let me see if I can respond, and I'm gonna ask the chief to respond too. But let me respond first. What you're describing is classic in terms of what I call a cycle of decay, meaning that for whatever reason, and that's a long discussion in and of itself. There is the acceleration of maybe things that were happening, but they were manageable, and to the point that now they accelerated to the point that it's overwhelming, and that is part of this increase in crime. Is a part of that, and this whole attitude of what the other young lady talked about in terms of the greatest threat. And I'll mention about communities and the whole thing around hate and the total disregard for traditional kind of engagement between even young and the young people and older people is a total disregard. So there's a lot of breakdown going on and a lot of underlying anxiety and attitude going on that is happening throughout not just Cleveland, but not the country, but in Cleveland, and then it's reflected in the neighborhood and the condition and the culture and the tradition of that neighborhood. And it's happening all at once. And so that is one of the reasons why defunding the police doesn't make any sense to me, because you're asking for them. And you're asking for them, and when you ask for them, your expectation is that you will get service, even though you know that they can't solve all of the underlying issues that precipitated crime. That is why you're just saying maybe if they were there, it would help to deter. Because them being able to be there to prevent is a whole different discussion. There's a different type of policing and things like that, which should happen. Now, that being said, I'm going to let the chief respond about the Buckeye area in particular. I believe that's the 4th district, and how they deploy resources in not just in the 4th district, but throughout the city, based on what causes them to add additional police and have additional presence in a certain neighborhood. Chief?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks, ma'am, for your call. One question I want to ask before I get into an explanation about deployment. Is there a street club on the block or the neighborhood that you're talking about?
No, there's not. And like I said, it's like, one person working, that was me for 22 years. And working with Detective Duke Vice and working with Cuts, Mander, and these different, law enforcement, and just trying to make it better, but now I'm tired.
Right, I understand. And the mayor talked about this a little bit, the decay of some of our neighborhoods and the things that really kind of kept things together, people like yourself. And I'm sure you would have liked a lot more help than you probably gotten from the rest of the neighborhood in this fight. But first of all, I'm sad to hear that you want to move out of the neighborhood because we need good folks like you in our neighborhoods that can work with not just law enforcement, but with the other services that people need. It's not all about crime. Crime is just a symptom of it. It manifests itself in crime, but there are a lot of things that cause that crime to happen. I encourage you, even if you're going to move out of the neighborhood or move to a different part of the city, I encourage you to keep working with Commander Cuts. He's a great guy. He has a great team over there. The 4th District is our largest police district and, of course, our busiest police district. So you may not see a police car on certain streets all the time, but if you call the commander and talk to him, he'll make sure that that service gets ramped up in certain areas. And, it's kind of difficult to maintain service in every street of the city. There are thousands of streets in the city, and Buckeye probably has maybe 2 police cars assigned to that Buckeye Shaker Woodland neighborhood. So they're on calls for service all throughout that area. But if you're not seeing those cars, you can call the commander. And if the commander doesn't have the resources to dedicate full time to that or to the attention that it needs based on what the problem is, then additional resources can be given to the commander from additional parts of the police division and also our safety partners like the State Highway Patrol. Some people have complained about them being in neighborhoods, doing traffic enforcement, being visible, tamping down on some of the stuff that happens out in public. But they're a great partner for us. And, they're a visible deterrent when they're out there running radar and things like that. So I encourage you to, and anybody out there, I encourage them to work with their district commander. If you have an issue as far as, not seeing police officers or a safety issue in general, your easiest thing is probably to call a district commander's office. But I'm not going to rattle through all those numbers. But if you don't have that direct connection, call the Mayor's Action Line. That's 664-2000. And then those complaints come directly to the Division of Police, and we'll get on them. But, it takes more than just law enforcement. It takes good people like you out there and reporting stuff to us working with our guys. Like you said, you've worked with vice units and people like that in the past to get something done with this, because it is a different time out there right now. And unfortunately, it's not just Cleveland; it's all over the country.
And if I may add, Chief, quickly, Buckeye is really an area that we're making heavy investments in. As you know, we have our neighborhood initiative, and the epicenter of that investment, which is around between the private sector and the public sector, is around $60-something million, and that is what you see happening up on 105 in Ashbury, the new building up there, the new homes that are being built, the resurfacing of streets, all of these things. And Buckeye is a targeted area within this neighborhood reinvestment thing that we're doing, particularly the Buckeye commercial strip. We believe that it has the bare bones and the great potential to be a neighborhood that gets stabilized through investments in the commercial strip and reestablishing legitimate commercial businesses there, and at the same time working with the residents of the Buckeye Shaker area for the residential side on whether it's new home construction, rehab, research. We're putting a lot of resources there in order to try to stem the which you are seeing as this decline and the lack of respect for neighborhoods. So just want to let you know that also.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Police Chief. Okay, everyone, we'd like to hear from you at this point in the call. We're going to ask a quick poll question. So if you're on the phone, you can vote by pressing the corresponding number on your telephone keypad. And our question we're asking, we want to know how you prefer to be contacted by our office. Press 1 for by phone, press 2 for email, press 3 by text message, or press 4 through social media. Again, we want to know how you prefer to be contacted by our office. Press 1 for phone, press 2 for email, press 3 for text message, and press 4 for social media. I just happened to notice we've had a couple of comment and a question come in online. Eugene writes in a comment, the LED lights are wonderful on my street, so very happy with the LED lighting. And we've also got a question from Alex. How is enforcement going to affect parking operators during football season? Mayor?
Well, let's take both of those. Remind me of the second one. But on the LEDs, we have over 60-something thousand street lights. These aren't traffic lights; they're street lights, and we're converting them to LEDs, which gives us a more efficient use of energy, which hopefully will reduce our electric bill as a city, and then also has better illumination. And this is one of the things that we've tied to that in terms of public safety, is that we have installed or will be installing at the end of these putting up these 66,000 LED lights, about 1,000 or more cameras in phase one. And these are cameras that are located in hotspot areas where there's criminal activity, and we've used like recreation center or large parks as the epicenter, and then 1,000 foot radius around that rec center or that large park. And as a result of that, we'll have the LED lights in and some cameras, and we're now working with our partners like RTA, CMHA, and others who have cameras so they can tie into our system. And then we'll be working with commercial strips, small businesses with storefronts who have cameras where they can tie into our. So we'll have with our real-time crime center the ability to access all these cameras to see what's going on. So if something's happening, then we can immediately see what's going on, deploy people immediately and efficiently. If something happens, we can get the feed so that we can review what has happened. It helps us to identify who's done what, and it's really the eyes and ears that the young lady was talking about on Buckeye. It gives us the opportunity to have more eyes and ears. Even though we don't have police presence, we will have the ability to see what's going on. Now, in terms of football, there is no tailgating. What is happened as under the COVID, the pandemic, as you know, the suspension of sports, and baseball, they came back and they played without fans, and so has basketball. But the governor has allowed for, I believe, a 15% capacity. So let's say, for instance, with the Browns, they might have a capacity of 70,000 people. Well, they will maybe have no more than 11 or 11 to 15,000 people who can attend the game. And so it allows now for spectators and fans to go to a game, but at a significantly reduced capacity. And that means that rather than 70,000 at the Browns game, you get maybe 11 to 15,000. And then they have a way in which they keep social distancing. People wear masks. They have ways in which they'll be doing concessions and all these other kind of things to ensure that that it is a safe environment. At the same time, we have banned tailgating at immunity lots, and we've also, as part of the mayor's emergency proclamation, civil emergency, we have banned tailgating on any parking lot in the city of Cleveland. Why? Because anybody who's been to a tailgate knows that you have a large number of people that, and I'm pretty sure that when they gather like that, they many of them won't have masks. They'll be drinking and all this other stuff, which will ultimately lead to an increase in infections, and that is what we do not want. So there is going to be the ability for fans to attend, but a substantially reduced number of fans in a socially distanced way, mask and all this stuff, but there will be no tailgating. You park your car where you want to park it as long as it's legal, but there will be no tailgating.
All right, getting back to phone calls, we've got Dawn on the line with us. Welcome to the call, Dawn. You're live with Mayor Jackson. Hello, Dawn.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, Mayor Jackson.
Hi.
Well, I would like to share an idea as to generate money for the city of Cleveland. Often when I am out making purchases, at the end of the purchase, I've been asked would I like to round up my change to donate to this particular organization, and therefore, and there's many different organizations that are out there. Could the city of Cleveland become or is eligible to receive additional change roundup to assist the city, and perhaps if we do have it, we can allocate those funds to places where they're needed, like safety and additional things. Is that something that's possible?
Well, interesting question. I had not thought about that. I would check with my finance department and the law department, first of all, to see if it's legal, and then to see how would we, in an auditing sense, how would we handle that through finance and stuff like that. I know that we have an ordinance, a really charter, that says that whenever there's a gift to the city, there has to be legislation passed to accept the gift. And I imagine there could be some umbrella kind of legislation that would say any monies collected through this process we can accept and expend. And it would go to earmarked fund for A, B, C, or D.
something like that. And I'm thinking off the top of my head without talking to the law department or to the finance department, but maybe something like that would work. I would tend, however, to probably not advocate for that at this time, because as you know, whenever there's a opportunity to make some money, you got con people out there. And so I don't want people to be promoting this is what they're doing, and then they receive money and they put it in their pocket, right? So if there is a way to do it, and is legal and financially is auditable, then the whole question is how would you make it? How would it be done in a way where there's accountability and not have people just run game and basically con people out their money? Because, you had a lot of, reminds me, these GoFund accounts where people, there's a tragedy and somebody says, well, look, there's money trying to be raised to help this family or help this or that. And then they find out that somebody is absconded with the money. They got the money and they're gone. So we have to be careful of that aspect of it.
All right, we're joined now by Jack. Jack, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question.
Hold on, I just dropped my earbud.
All right.
Good afternoon, Mayor Jackson.
How you doing?
It's Jack Creation. I'm fine. Kind of a blessing to be talking to you. My question is one that has to do with my knowledge from the funeral home perspective. And I can't fathom what's taking place in my country. I cannot fathom it, an iota of the logic that's being applied. So consequently, I can't fathom the amazing number of people who have died for what appears to me, based on hard evidence, not empirical clinical trials, but hard evidence over the last 50 years, that intravenous vitamin C in large doses cures almost every time critically ill patients dying from the coronavirus. And I'm speaking now to doctors all over the country, even in China and Europe, who are adamantly angry at the CDC, the World Health Organization, but then the local environments to permit our family members, our elderly. I've lost 3 relatives to the coronavirus, including Father Arcangelo at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, my confessor for almost 40 years, forgive me, and could not get anyone to respond to our pleas for intravenous vitamin C. And our president, I don't like how people speak about our president considering hypocrisy, but at the end of the day, our president had a law passed, the right to try. So if there's no way to save your life, and you have a right to try that's not a proven clinical trial, but it's been proven throughout 50 years to save lives with pneumonia, intravenous vitamin C, you have the right to try it. It's ignored. The federal law is ignored. Can you help me? Can you please help to get this into our community? You are a mayor that has been managing probably the poorest, second poorest city in America for I don't know how many since you began, and it's not an easy job. But Infant Jesus, my prayers for you are to lead our nation and our governor into starting to save lives by prescribing an inexpensive intravenous vitamin C program.
Okay. All right. Well, let me respond. First of all, appreciate your comment and your call in this regards. As you know, part of the confusion is what you mentioned around no one knows who to believe, and no one, and who we traditionally counted on to
give us proper guidance or give us the right information. It seems to be changing day to day, whether it's the CDC, World Health Organization, or the political leaders in the country. And so what you're speaking of is really this entire debate that's going on now around the pandemic and what is the proper way to proceed. And people have become very desperate. And whenever there are desperate people, there is a tendency to have desperate actions taken. If we were in proper leadership, proper coordination, and the confidence in our organizations who are supposed to define for us what is the right thing to do, if all that was aligned, I believe that what you're talking about, it would be either agreed upon or not agreed upon, recommended or not recommended. The problem you have now is that no one knows who to believe, and there's no direction or even credibility in the institutions that are supposed to be giving us proper information, even to the point where you have disagreement on whether there should be some releasing of vaccines or treatments such as the one you mentioned without the clinical trials and stuff like that. Now, all this stuff, again, in my opinion, could have been avoided with proper leadership and with proper information given out that wasn't tainted through politics. And when I say that, this is not in regards to any one person. You could go to the left or you could go to the right on this in terms of political ideology. One thing both extremes have, whether it's extreme left or extreme right, is they're both the same because they're intolerant of anybody else and their point of view. And when you have that kind of extremities debating and arguing with each other, the truth tends to get lost. So I can't promote something that I really don't know for sure is legitimate in terms of what they claim, and so and that which I have to rely on to give me the yes or no is whether it's not something legitimate or not. Those organizations tend to be changing their minds a lot on a lot of things. So sorry, I just won't be able to help you there, to be honest with you, because I just am not equipped to make that decision myself.
So, Mayor, we've got a couple of online questions I'd like to ask on behalf of the folks that have submitted them. Catherine wonders, does the city have any plans to work with the post office to make sure ballots are being handled properly?
Well, that's all federal, meaning that the federal government controls completely the post office and how it functions, its funding, its hiring, firing, everything else. And its failure to resource it and to cause it to not be able to function at the level and capacity it needs to function in a pandemic for the mailing out of ballots and returning of those ballots to boards of election is a serious problem. Now, what is happening is the Board of Elections are now looking at what can they do to help expedite mail-ins or absentee ballots. Example, let's say, for instance, you get an absentee ballot and you're going to mail it in, but it is so close to the election that you don't know if they're going to get there in time because of all of the cuts and the service cuts at the post office. So what the Board of Elections is doing, not just in Cuyahoga County, but other counties are talking about, is how can they then have a place where people can just bring their ballot. And you don't have to mail it. You can just take it there. You can take it to the Board of Election. You don't have to mail it there. But if you can't make it to the Board of Election, Maybe there's a place on the east side and a place on the west side, or a place in other cities where that can happen. So there's conversations going on with those who have the authority around elections to see what they can do to help make up for what may be the lack of capacity in the post office.
All right. Marcel sent in a question online, and his question is, will the moratorium on utilities be continued through 2021? The energy adjustment charge on his CPP bill tripled that bill. So he really wonders, are there grants available, or will utilities be partially forgiven?
Well, there is, as you know, there was a moratorium on cutoffs, and that was around the COVID because people lost their jobs and they needed to conserve money for food on the table or pay rent. So one of the things that we did was to put a moratorium on cutoffs. And now, these are people who would normally pay their bills, but they couldn't pay them because of the loss of a job or some portion of their income. Then there was the ones that we reconnected. These were people, even in good times, they weren't paying their bill. That's why they got disconnected, whether it was with water or sewer or electric or whatever it is, whether it's Clean Public Power or First Energy or whatever. And so these are people who were cut off even in good times because they weren't paying the bill. So what we allow is for them to have their power, their utility turned back on. Now, the moratorium is over. And so we are going through a process now of notifying people that the moratorium is over. And in reality, I guess they can start collecting now, but we're not going to do that. We're going to first notify people the moratorium's over, particularly those who we have who are not paying because of the COVID, and those who we restored, and let them know that there are programs available for them to help them pay their bills, and that whether it's heat for electricity or payment programs through water and sewer, whatever it may be. And so we will give people an opportunity to sign up for programs that could help them. But there will be a time this year where we will be back to a normal situation where if you're using utilities, you will have to pay your bill. If, in fact, you have past bills that you haven't paid because of the moratorium, there will be some way in which we will engage customers to help catch up in regards to those bills. But it will not be extended to all of 2021. It will not be.
Okay, thank you very much. And staying online, we have a comment and a question submitted by Darius. And the comment is, police unions and commanders need to change the culture in order to hold them accountable for bad actions. The question, what are you doing to change the police culture in Cleveland?
Well, it's a lot of things that we all can do. It always is. I'm the mayor, so I expect that question is, what am I doing? But I don't believe there's no one individual that can accomplish systemic and institutional changes, particularly in terms if they're embedded in that institution or culture, and it results in inequities, disparities, or racism, or whatever it may be. So it takes a community for that to happen. Now, to get to the unions, unions are unions, and they represent whoever their members are. And even unions will tell you that they are obligated to do that, even if they don't believe that the person who they're representing is the best person in the world, and even if they believe that the person probably should have been disciplined in some way. but they'll represent them. So unions are going to do that. Now, in terms of commanders are appointed positions. And there is, in the police department, there is a way in which we hold people accountable. As you know, we're under a consent decree that requires not only training, but in various areas so that we can minimize complaints and minimize officers doing wrong to people, but also in that consent decree, there is the civilianization of the head of the internal investigation unit, internal affairs, that investigate criminal activities by police and things like that. So we are taking significant action through training, restructuring, and really pushing out where the commanders of the various districts are responsible for holding their police officers assigned to them in their district accountable. And if people are put up on charges, then, there are processes that are required not only through collective bargaining, but also required through due process laws that has to occur, whether it's criminal, civil, or administrative. Chief, you have any comment on that?
Yeah, Mayor. If we talk about culture and things like that, since the mayor's been in office, he's appointed commanders and on up to make sure that, first of all, we have the right people in place, and second of all, that we have a diverse command staff. Our command staff is not 50-50, but if you look at the 4 deputy chiefs and myself, out of those 5 positions, there are 3 African Americans, 1 Hispanic, and 1 female. If you look at the leadership of the police division, it's folks that have been around and that have produced things that we need to be done as far as diversity and culture, and they've maintained that. The union, that's a totally different animal, but I try to tell people that the union does not run the police division. Our command staff and our supervisors run the police division. So we concentrate on making sure that the command staff officers, the supervisors out there have the tools and the resources they need to do the job properly, and that they understand what's expected of them so that gets pushed down to the officers, from myself all the way down through the command staff, supervisors, and to that frontline officer. So, culture has to be changed if there are things that happen that shouldn't happen within any agency, whether it's a police division or a corporation. And sometimes it's hard to do that, but I think, like the mayor said, with the consent decree process and even before that, things that we put in place that aren't required in the consent decree, I think we've done a pretty good job so far in making sure that our culture starts to shift in the way that it needs to be. Not to say that we're 100% there. Still have a lot of work to do, but our officers understand what's expected of them as Cleveland police officers in service to the city. And the mayor talked about the accountability piece. We hold people accountable when they don't meet those expectations.
Thank you very much, Chief. And a quick reminder, we still have a number of people that want to ask questions that are in the question queue, and we're working to get to as many people as possible. We appreciate your patience. Our next caller is Wilma. Wilma, welcome to the call. You're live with Mayor Jackson. What is your question?
Hello, Mayor. This is Wilma. And my concern
How you doing?
How are you, sir?
Pretty
you've
good.
been a great mayor. And Chief
Well,
Williams is outstanding. He gets an A+. Anyway, I wanted to talk about children, elementary school-age children. There are children, when they get to school, sometimes they're late in the morning. And what happens is they're sent to their classroom without the free breakfast. And these children, sometimes when they come for lunch, the lunch program is set up where some families have to pay a portion. Other children get to have their lunch totally free. And these same children, sometimes that came late, when they come through the lunch line, the lunch aide has a list of children whose parents haven't paid the fee, so those children don't get fed, if you can believe that. They have, picked up food along the line, and when they get to the cashier, she takes the food away from them. I'm a sub, and I've seen this. And my concern is that by the time these children go home, they're hungry, they haven't eaten all day. And sometimes, Mom is doing the best she can. She's working and she's overwhelmed with the responsibility of taking care of her children and that kind of thing. It's not always a bad mom, just a mom that needs some help. But I want children, when they come in late to school in the morning, I want those children fed. I don't want them sent to their classroom hungry, because you don't know when the last meal they had. And when they come through the lunch line at lunchtime, I want those children, even if their parents didn't pay, for them to be fed, not for the food to be taken from them, even thrown in the trash and sent the child to, you go and sit whatever all. And I was concerned about that, and that's a serious concern.
The last part about taking the food from the child and throwing it away, let me say it this way. As you know, school is going to be virtual for at least the first 9 weeks of this new school year. But one of the things that we're talking to the superintendent about is what does he plan to do during after the first 9 weeks? Are they going to have a hybrid of in person and online? And one of those discussion points I know is how do they what is the process for breakfast and lunch? I will mention to him the concerns that you raised. I will ask him if he is familiar or aware of the concerns that you raised, and I will make sure that as we move through the school year, that if there is children who are going back to school, that what you're talking about will be addressed. Okay?
All right, moving forward, we've got Martin joining us on the line. Welcome to the call, Martin. Go ahead with your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Jackson. I have two short questions, but first, you impressed me as being a very fair-minded and balanced person, and I'm really thankful that I live in a country where we have a multi-party system, because I feel that we need a good Democratic Party to keep the Republicans honest, and likewise, I'm sure you would agree, Republicans are needed to keep the Democrats honest. So my two short questions.
That's the name of the game.
A few weeks ago, we received a newsletter from all the council people, and I recently found out, quite by accident, that our city no longer recycles. Now, why wasn't that important fact mentioned in the newsletter? That's question one. Question two, on the other hand, we were told that the city council, who are all Democrats, have decided that racism is a health issue or health crisis.
Right.
So is that really an issue, or is that just a reflection of the Democratic Party line with no dissent from any other sector? So those are the questions.
Okay. Someone remind me of the second one. Let me deal with the first one around recycling. You're right that we have pretty much not been in the mode of recycling in the traditional way. Now, we were doing it, even though we didn't get a high compliance with the homeowners. We were doing recycling. And as you may know, the market for recyclables, the bottom fell out. And as a result of that, rather than people paying us for the recyclables and us getting a revenue stream from it, we now have to pay vendors to take our recyclables away. We have to pay people to take it away. And they went out for a bid on that, and we were doing that. And we went out to bid on it the last time, and it was quite a bit of money. It was a lot of money that they wanted to charge per ton, quite a bit of money. And as a result of that, we said that it made no sense for us to be paying that large sum of money for somebody to take our recyclables away from us. So we began to commingle the trash, the recyclable stuff, and the others, and there is some limited market with cardboard and paper and stuff like that. Now, why the council did not put that in the newsletter, I do not know. As you know, the mayor's office don't control them, and they don't control the mayor's office. We're separate bodies. I don't know why they didn't do it, but I know that they had a hearing on it and an in-depth discussion about it, and not only that was we, the city, at the table during their hearing. I believe they brought some people from the county and the recycling community who really validate the fact that that there is really no market now for most recyclables, and it costs a lot of money to get rid of it. So it just was cost prohibitive for us. Now, in terms of racism as a public health issue, that is, as you know, many times when people become aware of things, when there's an obvious transgression, and they usually don't think about it unless it happens to them. Well, the things that have been happening over the last few months have brought the issue of racism back to the forefront, particularly institutionalized racism. And what they're saying, in effect, that the ultimate outcome of institutional racism is the inequities and disparities that result in poor health conditions, higher crime rate, poor educational outcomes, inability to create wealth, and all these kinds of things that are at bottom social service health kind of things. And so what they're saying, in effect, that it is a health issue. Now, what they're struggling with right now is how to address that. And what is now that it's been declared, then what will they put in place to attempt to address it? And how do they identify the areas where this institutional racism exists? And then the most difficult part is how do you turn a train that's going 100 miles an hour, how do you spin it around on a dime without it colliding and wrecking? And that's their challenge right now, as they're in a discussion phase at this time in regards to, and it has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican, to be honest with you, because one of the strongest voices in this are corporate people and business people who are now saying that things do have to change in order for us to have a more sustainable and equitable future for America and more prosperous. We can no longer continue to have institutionalized race. So it's a full recognition by both Republicans and Democrats. You get a difference sometime in opinions as to how to address it, but it is not the recognition of it is not one or the other. Both parties recognize it. Now you get the extremes now. And extremes, like I say, they don't recognize anything but what they think. If you don't think what they think, there's something wrong with you.
All right, Mayor, next we've got Debbie joining us. Debbie, go ahead. You're live on the call with Mayor Jackson.
Yes, Mayor. I want to say thank you so much for everything. All is well and in great order. That's one thing I want to say. But I want to make for sure that everyone knows that I personally feel safe, I feel secure, I feel loved and cared for, and I feel at peace. And one of the main focuses is because you are the mayor. I want to commend you, Mayor Frank Jackson, for all of your actions and your many successes. I want to commend you for being a mayor that cares. I have listened to these town halls, every one that I know of, I have listened to them. And even when opposition have come forward, the way that you handle yourself is great. Like Tony the Tiger, great. I love the way you handle yourself, even in opposition. And one thing about strength is you have to be strong in order to survive. And strength comes through as you take care of opposition. See, having everything go right does not help. It is the person's character comes through when adversity shows up. And I want to say for you to be greatly, greatly, greatly proud of yourself and the way that you have handled everything. In everything, you have been so wonderful in everything. And in the great city that we live in, I want to say that people need to understand that I need to shed some light here. And the Word of God tells me that we need to laugh, to love, to trust, and be in truth. And these are all in capital letters. And all is well and in great order, like Tony the Tiger, great. And you need to know, Mayor, that this is one person who is very, 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 very glad to be a citizen in a city that is wise enough to have you.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. And I, for hope of not ruining all of your praise, I appreciate it. But I will say this, that people have a right to opinions. And whether I agree with them or not, people have that right. And you know, we live in a country who's built on a culture that really says that, promotes and says that not only do people have a right to their opinion, they also have the right to vote their conscience and their mind so that those in line with their opinion can be in office and to help guide the country, the state, or the city. So it's just part of the tradition and culture of America. I will also say that being an elected official and a politician is an honorable profession. You know, it's not made for everybody. Everybody can't do it. But those who do it and do it right have the greatest opportunity to improve the lives of people, communities, families, things like that. And our duty and our responsibility and our obligation is not to lord over people, but to serve and to use whatever authority or power that we gain through the process of holding these offices to serve the people. And when that happens, you're going to find people who are not going to agree with the way in which you do things. But the point is that as mayor, I represent people who don't like me. I represent people whose opinions I disagree with or they disagree with me. And I represent people who would never vote for me. But I have the obligation to serve them as citizens of the city of Cleveland, and that I do. I do that. It's not always with people agreeing, but it is not out of a sincere effort to do the right thing. So I appreciate what you said.
All right, we got another caller now. Sandra joins us. Welcome to the call, Sandra. You're live with Mayor Jackson. What's your question?
Hi.
Hello there.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, hi. Since Cleveland Clinic got off of lockdown, I noticed that when you go over there, every appointment you make, they say you can't be seen unless you're tested for COVID. And if you want to be seen in a couple of places, they want you to be repeatedly tested, and they're even refusing full-scale service in the emergency room. Is that acceptable?
Well, that is part of their policy. As you said, they were on the shutdown. I had a family member that had to go to the emergency room, and no one could go in there with them. And they were in there by themselves, and then they wound up in intensive care and no one could visit them. No one could visit them while they were in intensive care, and then they got put into a regular room. No one could visit them. And even if now when you go to long-term care centers, where nursing homes or something like that, even they are restricting people from visiting. So this pandemic has wreaked havoc in what is normal. Now, in terms of the treatment side and getting tested, I do know people, even now when they're allowing someone maybe to accompany someone who needs to have someone in a wheelchair or something like that where they need some help, one of the things they will do is test people to ensure that they don't have the infection, and if they do have it, then they immediately go to what they need to do to provide whatever care they have to provide for the person. And what we're finding is a lot of people now are going to emergency rooms because they have symptoms, and when they have these symptoms, a lot of the people who have the symptoms do have the virus, and so they're trying to protect, I guess, their people who work there. They're whether from the receptionist to the nurse to the doctor. And is it normal and is it the best thing in the world? No. But even at City Hall, we're only open of City Hall right now on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. In a few weeks, we'll be open 5 days a week. But right now, we're open only to employees. And when we go in, including me, I have to have a mask on and I have to get my temperature checked. And if I have a high temperature, then I can't come in, and I can't come in without a mask. And that's all the employees that come to work on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Now, when we open up for 5 days a week, not only will we have a working environment that is safe for the workers and employees, we'll have a different protocol for people who enter City Hall. And that will probably require people who want to come into City Hall to wear masks to get their temperature checked and only allow a certain number of people in an area because we don't want to violate social distancing. So everything has changed. Is it what we like to do? No. But is it a necessity right now? Yes. So it's just the way it is right now. Hopefully we can get past this moment.
All right, next on the line, we've got Mary joining us. Go ahead, Mary. What is your question or comment?
I was doing a comment for our Mayor Jackson. I knew him when he was my council person. From the council person, now he's my mayor. And he has been good all the time. He looked out for all the people in the community and not in the community. And the captain, I remember when he came to us before he was captain, well, he would come down to our ward club meeting. So you have to give credit to people while they living, because when they die, they don't know nothing you're saying. And I just want to let him know that I always told him he was my mayor. And so I don't care. And I still said, and he has did a lot of stuff for our Ward 5, okay? So that's where I'm at. Okay. So I didn't have nothing to say, but I just wanted to say that. And I love you, and I love the captain. I love everybody. And like you said, when you do stuff, everybody's not going to like you. And the thing about it, I got to put this in, they didn't even like Jesus Christ, okay? Called him everything but a child of God until he died on that cross. So if they did that to him, what you think they're going to do to us?
All right.
That's all I have to say. So we just have.
I thank you. I thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. If you'll appease me, could we just do a quick lightning round on a couple of topics, Mayor?
Yeah,
and the first one is, let's talk census for a moment. And the census being the importance of the census.
Yes. Census, as you know, they cut it off a month. They shorten it a month, which makes it very problematic. So it's so important that we figure out a way. If you haven't answered the census form, there will be an opportunity to send your census in either online or through some outreach for people. So it is very, very, very important. It determines how much money the city gets and from the federal government. It also determines the number of people who are represented in Congress. So very important.
Thank you for that. Now, what are we doing to make sure we don't have violent protests?
Well, it's difficult. If I knew that, we'd all be billionaires because we would sell that to everybody. We cannot guarantee that people won't misbehave or be violent. What we do is when there are protests, we have a presence, and we let people know they have a right to protest is a constitutional right, but they don't have a right to harm people or to tear up property, and we act pretty aggressive when that happens.
And could you also touch base on your mandate against street and block clubs and social gatherings?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we're moving away from bars and nightclubs and restaurants. Not that we're ignoring them, but we are now concentrating efforts because we have that under pretty good control right now. We're moving into the highest way in which the virus is transmitted, and it's through the ways in which you mentioned. And so we're next week, the health department and public safety will give me an outline of a strategy they have to help minimize the transference of the virus through these social events and mass gatherings.
I appreciate that, Mayor, and it's always impressive how you just sit and take calls and talk straightforward with everyone and give great answers. We are coming to an end of this live event today. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to add, sir?
Well, what I'd like to say is I appreciate all the people who called in, particularly those who've been on the line for over an hour, and we have not gotten to them personally. Hopefully, some of my answers, even though long in some cases, will address some of the issues that they want to raise, and that I give extended answers because I try so hard to not be political when I talk to people. People are straightforward with me, honest with me, even if they don't like me or agree with me. I appreciate the fact that they're straightforward and honest with me. And so, and I always like to put things in context when I answer, so it does take me a while sometimes. But I will say that I really appreciate everybody being on the line, and I apologize to those who waited and still another town hall, but they still couldn't get through. I'll try to get better and shorter with my answers if I can. But I do want to remind people that the pandemic is not over. Stay at home if possible. You have to go out, keep social distance, wear your mask, and continue to wash your hands. And whenever we are able to get this pandemic under control, then you will see the economy come back in a robust way. Until then, you will only see a stagnant economy and some start and go. So it's so important that we do those things that prevent the spread of the virus. And in terms of public safety, we recognize that we have a challenge out here and that we're working hard on that. And we also recognize that the immediate request that people have is around things that are happening in front of them and their need to have a police presence. But we're also working on the longer term around those underlying things that are that result in crime. So again, thanks everybody for calling in and appreciate you.
So as the mayor just said, we do appreciate this opportunity to speak directly with you and answer your questions. If we were not able to get to your question this evening, you can send us an email at communications@clevelandohio.gov. We also ask that you follow the City of Cleveland, the City Hall on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'll certainly host more of these events in the future to keep you informed on what we're working on and other important updates. Thanks again for participating in this call. We hope you stay healthy and safe, and have a wonderful evening.